Okay. I always feel like I should be like playing music or something like during that intro, like I don't know, elevator music or some heavy metal. Who knows? Anyway, hope everybody's doing well. It's been a few weeks since I've done one of these, so hopefully everything is running smooth. Um, let's we're gonna do a few different things today. So first off, I happen to have Planet Labs PL up on the screen here. So we several of the Patreon members. I wrote a earnings play for PL earlier in the week, and so several of the Patreon members decided to jump on the bandwagon. And there were a number of different strikes. There was at least I put up a 35 strike on this stock expiring 35 puts expiring next Friday, but there were a number of other people. I think there was like a 31 and a 34 and another 30. There were a few others. Anyway, it was kind of like, so I watched it this afternoon. Earnings went well with Planet Labs. And so then we get an IV crush tomorrow, and this thing is going to be pure cash printing for I think everybody. So, but it felt a little iffy because if you look back, in fact, down here, if you look at, oh, I don't have it right in front of me. If you look at the historical move for Planet Labs, it was 2 or 3 quarters ago, went moved by like 45%. So, I mean, that's crazy. Like, so I thought, okay, if we miss earnings, like this might be an assignment, but it was a good little party there. So Planet Labs earning was good. Rest of the market, as you can see, like lots of red in the aftermarket hours today. So anyway, so let's get on to the real meat. So there's two main topics for today. First topic and both of them will be relatively quick. I don't think this live stream will go half an hour like usual, although I always say that and then it does. First is the alerting system. So I'm writing an alerting system for GTH Trading. It has it's going to have two separate alerts in it, and in fact, this list over here, these alerts over here, what I'm doing is I actually have, as a former software engineer, I'm writing a little piece of software that sits and collects a bunch of alerts with a whole bunch of different criteria, crunches a whole bunch of numbers, and comes up with a set of daily alerts that fulfill all these criteria that I use myself to trade. So I suppose you can call it proprietary. But this is the list today. And now this is all testing still, but this is the list. There were 32 of these things that populated today. And there's even stuff in here like futures, even though I don't really trade futures. But one of the ones that I'm going to show you a little bit here is Rackspace. So Rackspace is cool because if you go back and you look at Rackspace, like let's go to like a daily candle here. So, and I know I've got all this text kind of in the way, but like look at this. Look at Rackspace was literally, if you go back to February, 17 February 2026, Rackspace was at 37 cents a share. 37 cents. And now it's at 5.59 a share. So if it had gone up to 370 a share, that would be a 1,000%, right? That's 100x, right? And so it did double that. So like crazy. Like if you had a bunch of money in Rackspace, then you could be like, you could be set right now. But so anyway, so I thought it was kind of an interesting one here. So this is essentially what one of the alerts is going to look like. Now there's two separate alerts. The first alert is kind of like a bullish technical setup, right? Just like it says in here, and it's the same type of analysis that I do every weekend when I write stuff for the blueprint, right? I go through the Ichimoku cloud and I go through the moving averages and I go through standard deviations and Bollinger Bands and linear regressions and all these things. And I put together, compile this list, right? I filter out all these stocks and I compile this list and I put it all in, in this this bag where I do analysis, right? And so this is doing the same sort of thing, although it's actually a little bit more in depth, but I have a piece of software kind of like building this. And this isn't an AI thing. Like I wrote every line of this, and it is not, I don't have a model. There's no reason to have models crunching this. Like this is all good old fashioned number crunching that I've written. I've been in the process of writing. So, and it spits out these reports, and you can see it's got like this technical snapshot, and it gives you some notes. It tells you the Ichimoku status and all of these things. And so these will post out starting in probably a week or two to GTH Premier members and Magnate members. These will publish like once a day. At the end of the day, one will come out. They'll have a snapshot and all these sorts of things. So there's this bullish technical setup, and then there's also going to be another type of alert, which is specifically built to try to grab stocks at local minima. And I don't mean buying the dip, right? Like buying the dip is not, I mean, that's like casino stuff. Like that's buying the dip is kind of gambling, right? And I say casino stuff like everybody buys dips. I buy dips, everybody buys dips. Okay, cool. But this will be a real technical thing, and it will take into account a whole bunch of things that kind of say, okay, well, a stock has been doing poorly, right? And a lot of the tech stocks have been doing poorly. If you look back like September, October of last year especially, there's been this constant downhill kind of trend recently, and a lot of those stocks haven't felt real safe to buy or to sell options on because they keep going down. And so how do you know when we're really at the bottom, like when we're actually really at a local minima? And that's kind of a weird divergent state where some indicators are saying, strong buy, and other indicators are saying strong sell. And so I'm putting all that stuff together to build another type of alert here. But as you can see, these alerts aren't just like, RSI crossed 70 today. Like it's an actual analysis, and that'll come like in the next couple of weeks. Like I said, that'll come free for Premier members and stuff. So that's pretty cool. If they're, and actually you can see these little green triangles here, and you see the text up at the top, and that's been some of my testing stuff, because there's actually a very large indicator that I had to write to do all this in order for TradingView to start sending these alerts, these webhooks out to the software that I have hosted elsewhere. So that's that. I wanted to talk about it because it's super exciting. It's there's always got to be, when you're running a business, and now for me the business here is really the trading, and Patreon is just a thing that I kind of decided after the fact, because it made sense to try to give this out and everything, to try to give, people, educate people and give people, these tools and all these other things. So, so this is really exciting, because as somebody who tries to be a visionary with various businesses that I've had, this is the sort of thing that, that you're looking for to try to continue making something bigger and better. Really better is the most important thing there. So anyway, so those are the indicators. Imagine if you had owned Rackspace back here in February and then it ballooned. You would be super happy about that move. Not that, we could have known, but it's just such a cool thing to look at watching those. So, okay, so last little piece here, and we're already at 9 minutes. I don't feel like I've been talking for 9 minutes. Okay, so here is Zscaler. So back in my corporate software engineering days, I used to work at a company called WebRoot. And WebRoot was a cybersecurity company. I used to work on the software suite at WebRoot. And Zscaler, of course, is, if you're in the cybersecurity world, then you've heard of Zscaler. And people, I kind of chose Zscaler. I put Zscaler on the blueprint this week as what I called a quote underdog. And I had I had a bunch of people that I knew at WebRoot that I still talk to, and there were all these scenarios there in the cybersecurity world where I was I guess I was kind of like voting for the underdog. Like I like love the underdog. Like some people want to see the victory. Like I'm always on the underdog side. And so Zscaler here was kind of an interesting one for me. And so as you look at it, the reason we start saying, well, why was Zscaler such an underdog is it starts right here on this vertical yellow line. So this was earnings. And if we go back, earnings was May 26th. And even though, if you can see that number down there, they beat their earnings per share estimate by 7%. So they were above it. Like they beat it. But that wasn't good enough for Wall Street. Wall Street was like, well, we don't really like your, I think it was a forward guidance. Wall Street was like, yeah, we're not really sure. We think those numbers are good. Like we think this is unfortunate. So as you can see, Zscaler dropped off the map. And if I go to a 1 hour candle here, it's a little easier to see what happened on this vertical line. Earnings hit, and then there was just this massive drop. I mean, we were down, we had that high right before that, and we dropped all the way down to about, this 122. Zscaler dropped about over 35%. And in the meantime, it's come back. Now it's only down by 29%. So it's come back a decent bit. But here's the thing. Companies, and I don't generally talk about, I don't talk about the fundamentals as often, right? Like I'm a super technical person and I think fundamentals are important. But I also think that the technicals are, that's where I'm able to really make my mark. And so the technicals here don't look good, right? They don't. Now, and we're going to talk about the Ichimoku in a minute. If we activate the 1 hour cloud here, we start, and let me turn off some of this other junk so that it's a little more obvious. We're still down here, but if you go back, so here we are, we hit earnings, we come down, we start moving back up, and if you were looking at this as if it were June 2nd, right? Just a few days, what is that, Monday, Tuesday? The cloud is actually really positive. That's like looking at it as if all of that stuff was gone. Like if we looked at it from this day, this is like current day, cloud looks good again. But then if you look now, even though we have a positive linear regression, cloud is back down. This is a buy or a sell signal, right? Like this became a sell signal like hours and hours and hours ago of trading, right? And so Zscaler kind of becomes this underdog because we've got this terrible earnings, and so sentiment just fell through the roof, like minus 30, what did I say, 35, 32%, 35%, like crazy drop. Like people don't generally like Zscaler. And so then the question becomes this, like I was talking about with that alert, like, well, if we buy it now, are we buying the dip? Or are we buying, something at a point that like it's a wounded fawn that's at the bottom, actually at the true minima, and it's going to come back? And so the fact is that looking at Zscaler here, there's a number of different things, right? There's a number of different things. I'm going to go over a couple of them really quick, but the fact is here are the fundamentals are the thing that matters. Zscaler has been a profitable company. They're a really good company from a cybersecurity perspective. I look at other cybersecurity companies, kind of critically. Zscaler is a good company. They're doing good things. Cybersecurity is becoming a more important field, not a less important field, right? We're going to need it more. We continue to need it more. And really the reason that Zscaler dropped through the floor here is something that Wall Street kind of like, has their nose stuck up in the air about it, right? Like there's a lot of times, a company will come out and they've got this, forward earnings, which is a prediction of the future. And, you've got a lot of companies who I think probably are out there. A lot of people would suggest they're out there cooking the books and they give these good earnings guidance. And then what happens? All of a sudden now we've got, companies that are doing well with cooked books and potentially, right? I mean, I can't say this for sure, right? But it looks like, a lot of people think the books are cooked and that they're doing well because of it. But here, Zscaler got nabbed by Wall Street because of something that is supposed to happen in the future. So, so when I look back at that and I look at kind of this fundamental picture of Zscaler as a business and Zscaler as a cybersecurity sector business, and then I look at this, this is very much, and then of course we can hop over to the technicals, right? But it's very much a picture of like, this is the underdog, and this is this scenario where this particular underdog is not done fighting yet. So we've got, we look at the 52-week range. We were within $7 of the 52-week range, which is like what, less than 5%, when we were down here at the 122 low. So that's a really good support point right there, that 114.63. It bounced off well before it got to there. But if we look, let's look at all the details here, and I'm going to try to run them through them relatively quickly. So Ichimoku on 1 hour, not good, right? It's not looking good. 4 hours, not looking good. Day, well, it depends now what happens tomorrow. So if we look at this, we do have a green cloud. It's not phenomenal, right? It doesn't have a lot of area, and there's not a lot of expansion here at the end. But we do have a stock price now granted that stock price is in the cloud, but we have the conversion, the blue conversion line is just barely above the red right here. And so what we're gonna, and actually it's exactly the same right now, 156.78 for both of those. So this is all kind of not great, but it's looking better than the previous the previous time frames. And tomorrow, in order to get above the cloud here, it's going to have to come up to like 143. So that's again, like we could consider that as a resistance level for the time being. And if we pass that, it might become a support level. But so from the cloud perspective, we were doing super well here, right? This nice trend looked great. And then what happened? We ran into issues with the Iran war stuff, and that hit a lot of areas. And so it's not surprising with Zscaler being one, not having great sentiment at the moment, and two, being a tech stock, that people were probably rotating out of it, right? They're rotating, they're going to other things. They're doing, all these types of issues, these other types of places, like all of a sudden, like, let's see here how Costco's doing. So Costco was up, well, I guess $10 isn't that much for Costco. Costco was up 1% today, right? And it's been going up because people are rotating out. So there is some technical woes right there with Zscaler. If we go and we take a look at the moving averages, so we've got our 50, 100, 200. And in this particular case, let's go to 1 hour candle here so we can get a little bit better look at how it's bouncing, right? So it came up, and in fact, if you look early on right here, and this bottom one, this 144.97 is where is that? Oh, I see. I was behind. Okay, I was like, those values weren't making any sense. Okay, 143.01. That's the 50-day moving average. And so if we come back here, we see, okay, it bounced off this 50-day right here in the middle of the screen right here. It tests it for a number of hours. It tests this and then ultimately breaks through. And then look, just like we were saying before about how a resistance level can become a support level and vice versa, right? Same thing here. It comes down, almost hits, bounces basically off of this region right here before continuing up, and without any so much as a pause, breaks through the 100-day, and it's just on its way back up. It's like right on its way back up, and then all of a sudden what happens? Here, we hit earnings. Boom, gets pummeled. Back down here, low sentiment, same sort of deal. It comes up, it tests the 50-day, blows through it, but then it kind of falters, right? And look at how much time it spends, all these hours testing right at the 50-day, right? And goes below it. So in this case, again, like when we talk about an underdog, that's what we're talking about here. The technicals are not beautiful, but you can see the strength here. You can see that when things feel the sentiment is there, you can see that this thing takes off. And so let's take a look here. So like we have this one run before earnings. We pop up about 33%. 33% the stock comes up over the course of what is that? May over the course of a couple of weeks. And then we get down to this bottom here and we pop all the way back up another 27% before the Iran war hit. Stuff gets funny over in Iran with the ceasefire that we have going on right now. 27% it comes back up, right? But so you can see the strength, right? Even though we're at a position where this stock is really low for where it's at, it has this push behind it. And you can see like just barely on this relative strength index down here, when it hit that 27% peak, it was just barely above. It was like, let's see, so it was 83 on the RSI, which is, it's kind of an over bought condition. And then we see it drop back down, but there's a lot of strength there. It took 27% gain to get to an overbought, like perceived overbought place. So from a moving average perspective, yes, we're bearish with this stock price being below these moving averages, but we can also see how quickly it just can pound through those when the sentiment is good. So if we look now at the 5, 10, 20, we've got a lot more kind of action going on here, right? We've got some testing going on. We have Zscaler again. It was and this one is kind of coincidence, right? Like you might say, if you were totally in the absence of outside external factors entirely, and all we did was look at the technical analysis, then you would look at this and you would say, oh, look at that. So which one is that? That's 154.76. That's the 20-day. So this one right here in the middle here that it's bouncing right off of, that's the 20-day moving average. So there's a little bit, of solid, technicality there and saying, well, why did it get exactly to that? Why did it test that so many times? But again, like we're talking about Iran war stuff here, right? We're talking about stocks early this week not doing great, like having some trouble, right, in the world, and that impacting how things look technically. So that's part of this right here. Like the technical is only half of the fence, but then we see this drop, right, when things start kind of going south, right? And so, but there's a lot of action, right? Like if we can maintain some semblance, or well, there's two things. If we can maintain some semblance of, relaxation in the in the world, which seems impossible these days, but if we can have some level of normalcy, then Zscaler feels like it has enough momentum and pressure to just push right back up through these. And the other piece is that is time. The more time that passes from this earnings report, the less people will care about it. It won't even matter anymore. And then they'll start looking back in a month from now, whatever, they'll look and they'll be like, man, this thing's at its 52-week range. The fundamentals are good. It's, it hasn't like dropped any lower, assuming it doesn't drop any lower, right? Blah, 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 blah. And so those two things are going to matter, right? Normalcy in the market and time from this earnings report to let those, those wounds mend, or whatever you want to call them. So that's the Ichimoku. That's the moving average here. If we look at in terms of standard deviation, and I like to look at this on a daily chart, if we look at, there's so much standard deviation here, right? And I should look at the linear regression too. We'll look at that really quick. There's so much deviation here, right? That we have, if we move down 1 sigma, that puts us at $120 a share. 2 sigma down would be at 105. So $30 move on this is pretty substantial, right? That's what, like 30% or something, right? So it's a decent, variance level here. And the same thing on the upper end, like a 1 sigma move up puts us at 150. Like that's not, that's a pretty good price increase for what, based on the variance of the historical data, isn't too bad. So it won't take a lot. It won't take a lot of variance here to get this price back up another $15, which is like just over 10%. We do have a negative linear regression here. If we go back to an hour, we're positive. We got a good slope here. We've got a decent amount of variance, right? These 2 sigma bands on either side, they're pretty wide, but you can see here where actually the stock price is following that decently well. If we go up to a 4-hour, we're still on a positive linear regression. So that's promising. So on lower time frames, smaller time frames, we're seeing now that we're kind of passing by some of that a little bit, especially at the 1 hour, right? Because once we hit the 1 hour, it's no longer taking into account that earnings, right? Like earnings on this, like the data for the linear regression stops right there. All we're taking into account is post earnings fall. And so that looks pretty nice there. And in the 4 hour, it's far enough back that we're also taking into account the data, this rise on the way up before it hit earnings and fell. And it's still positive, right? It's still, we don't have just the good, we don't have just the bad. We've kind of got, this thing way back up, and what you would call a retracement if there wasn't an earnings, a huge retracement back down. We're back up a little bit, we've retraced back down, and now it's kind of up to the world to decide, like, hey, do we want to be like, relaxed and not stressed, or do we want to jump back into a war? so that's the big question there. So that's a look at the standard deviation. That's a look at linear regression and the Ichimoku. I don't have any, I haven't drawn any trend lines or GAN lines. I haven't drawn any, supply or demand zones. But if anybody is interested in trading Zscaler, we can, reach out and we can look at all of that stuff. I think that, it's funny as I go through this, it occurs to me that, I talked about Zscaler because it's an underdog, and I talked about them because I feel like there's a lot to be gained from this stock, and I own a number of contracts, both at 130. I have owned puts at 130 and 132. I spent the week trading them. I've spent this week and last week trading those, and I've made good money on them. And so, part of this volatility here is, I've gotten in when it's been high, and I've gotten out I've gotten out when it's been high for the most part, and I've gotten in when it's been low. And so I think that there's more to this here. I think the fact that it got hit so hard means that it's a bargain. I think if you ever read any of the like Zacks rank stuff or any of those sorts of things, I think that those guys agree with me. The institutions and firms tend to agree with me. And so as I was beginning to mention, we look at some of these technicals, and I certainly would never choose Zscaler on the blueprint. Like when I'm making blueprint stocks, like those stocks are like, they have to be solid, right? Like they have to be the super solid choices. And Zscaler's not. Like if I'm totally honest, like it's not a super solid choice. But there's a ton of potential here. Like this is an undervalued stock. I think that, there's a lot of candor here in talking about the technicals and saying, okay, well this, the Ichimoku doesn't look good, and there's, this and that and whatever, but it has a lot of value. And I'll just pull this up. I hope this is still up here. I almost didn't even touch it. Yeah, okay, so Zscaler. So here's a options chain for Zscaler. So if we look at, for example, this is June 5, so there's not a lot of premium there, right? Like this expires in 24 hours. Meanwhile, the bid ask 26.54, so you're like at about 40 cents. 40 cents a share for this, which is, like a third, what is that, a 0.3% weekly gain, not even weekly, right? It's like way more than that. 0.3% gain for a day. Like if you chose a 130 strike, which, is $5 down, that's like a heavily, sure, it moves more than $5 in a day, but that's six positions, seven, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, six positions out of the money. So that's pretty stellar. But if we go down and look at June 12th, and we take a 130 strike, which, like I said, I was in 130 last week. I closed it. I got back in at 132, and then I sold more of these at 130, I think yesterday or the day before when it was down near its local minima. So look at this, 130, the bid ask 224, 273. Obviously those will change tomorrow when the market opens. Theoretical is 256. Theoretical price, right? And so, but if you look at that 224, 273, let's just say you only got 230 for those contracts. Well, that's, well over 1% a weekly gain on your premium on your money invested, weekly gain on that premium. So if you were able to get 260, that's a 2% premium gain on your money invested. So there's it's not as if the premiums here are shabby, right? Like 2%, like it's 2% weekly gain on a stock that has bearish tendencies, but is really, really close to its 52-week low and shows incredible strength when it has the opportunity to rally with the rest of the market. And in fact, one more thing, I just feel like I have 10 things that I want to talk about that I never do, and I have 10 other things that I don't know I want to talk about that come up during the course of these things. So look at this. This is S&P. This is comparing the percent gain of S&P to the percent gain of Zscaler. And you can see right now it's way down, right? Because it took this crazy hit. But look at this. As S&P is rising over the course of this rally, look at the difference in slope. Look at the difference in slope here. These two lines, right? There's that line is Zscaler, and this line, I better close all of those indicators. And this line is S&P. Look at the difference in the slope there. Now, obviously, it's a tech stock. Some people might come in and be like, "Well, it's a tech stock. What do you expect? Tech stocks rally like crazy." Yeah, but S&P is the benchmark, and the goal here is really to show you the strength, the momentum that S&P. Look at that one as well there. The momentum that this stock has when things calm down and the market just starts rallying. So. I don't know. I guess my goal isn't to convince anyone of anything, but I like talking about it because, like I said, I'm all for the underdog. That doesn't mean you need to force a trade because of some emotional thing like that. But if you haven't considered trading ZS before, then you might, because it's a good company. Fundamentals are good, and I'd be willing to bet that we see those technicals improve as the weeks tick by. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. I did start this new kind of section for the weekly blueprint, and that is, it's called Would I Buy It? And so I'm taking suggestions or recommendations or requests from people, and if it's a stock that passes the analysis and I think it looks good, then I will either buy $10,000 worth of shares, or I will put in $10K worth of cash secured puts at the money. And I think it's a cool thing to do, because if you're good with your analysis, then the rest of it, if the analysis looks good and you think it's a good buy, then the rest of it is just emotion. Right. So if anybody has any suggestions, if you want to see any of those, let me know. I will. I'm going to try to get back on a weekly cadence here. So I guess we'll just see how that goes. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Take care.